Hello, it's Fran Davidson from psychicandenergywork.com.au, and this is my monthly update for January 2025. The monthly update is always a halfway through the month look at some of the dynamics that are playing through the period. This January's chart is a very interesting one. It always is. I mean, every month is interesting from a numerological perspective, but this January's chart carries two 10-1s. It carries a 130, which reduces to 4. It carries 3 5s, 3 4s, and 4 zeros. So what am I getting at by rattling those numbers at you? 10-1 is always a time when we are going to find out more about ourselves and more about self as a dynamic that can be channeled through and by anybody, as the spectrum of child through to grown up, ego through to divine self. 10 is interesting because 1 periods are always zones that, in a sense, feel less active, feel less engaged. 1 can often be a time when we feel like we're missing the flow, we're missing the engagement that we usually experience, whether that's with people or whether that's just life in general and, attainment or progress, etc., etc. Now, of course, January is always an interesting month because it's often a time when people, or a lot of people, are still on break and businesses are just starting to warm up again. So all of those dynamics put together can make January a sort of you will sit still for longer than you want to sort of period. A 10 can magnify that as an experience. And so 2 10-1s in the chart sort of flag that this month is a time that wants us reflecting, not because that's all we do, hello, that would be really boring, but it is a time that wants us understanding things, discovering things about self again as a dynamic that plays through us all, whether it's in balance, whether it is not, irrespective of the angle it comes from. Now, that is also interesting because, again, this chart also carries 3 5s. And one way to read 5 is flexibility, adaptability, tolerance, patience, forgiveness. Some days we're all really good at that stuff. Other days, maybe a few questions around it. So what am I trying to get at there? But also, too, this month again carries the 3 4s. And 4 is very much about awareness. 4, therefore, can be about assumptions and the beginning of building something. In other words, what am I trying to say there? It's almost like 4 can be seen as a time that can be represented by the first few layers that are constructed in a brick wall. It is the very beginning of the solidity of what we're heading into. It is also, therefore, the very beginning of construction, formation, conclusion. And, of course, all numbers, all dynamics aren't just here to talk about, shall we say, the tangible, the normal world, or normal achievement. They also speak of spiritual and intuitive, energetic realities and, therefore, learning curves. Now, why do I mention these things? Because in a sense, one way that 4 can be read, therefore, is along the lines of the conclusions we reach and therefore the opinions we form about ourselves, about each other, about life in general. And one thing that seems to be coming through this month is the fact that, of course, egoic self in anybody is an incredible labeler. It's almost like it invested in a Dymo labeler years and years ago, and it's an absolute whiz, like watching a child on a cell phone or a mobile phone play on the keyboard. For people my age, it's like, how do you do that? How do your fingers move so fast, so accurately, so agilely, if that's the way to say it, or with such agility. 4 can be a time when we start to build with the wrong stuff. And that's not necessarily the wrong tangible stuff. We might be perfectly building the right tangible things. And yet in our mind, and of course mind is the beginning of everything because everything starts on the energetic level. And so our thoughts, our feelings, our fears, our projections, our beliefs, our mantras, our affirmations, they are where everything starts, especially if we're talking about manifesting, whether that's energy, whether that's state, or whether that's hello, tangible success again. So 4 can be a time when it's coupled with also the 5s and the 10-1 of realizing how egoic self can be so good at taking a photo at a particular moment about itself, about others, about life in general, and very quickly drawing a conclusion in a way that that conclusion is generalized and spread across the whole entity that it's dealing with. What do I mean there? So if I say, for example, if I give you an analogy, somebody might be talking with a friend and they're discussing how they know or their experience of another person, and they might say, you know what, she's really angry, or he's really arrogant, or don't know, any label. What I'm trying to get to is that, of course, in each of us, because we are egoic and divine at the same time, in a sense, we're like gemstones in a way that we all have the same number of facets on our surface. We all have the same number of angles through which and with which we channel. And yet egoic self in all of us, whether it is concluding about itself or others, can be very quick to develop or conclude in a way that therefore labels itself or another in a negative way or in a limiting way, when in a way that is, again, she is this or he is that, yeah? When in fact, what egoic self is actually trying to say is, in that moment, that channel, that being, demonstrated this tendency or channeled that frequency. So I'm not quite sure whether I'm doing this well enough, but can you see how the shift from labeling people or events or even life, the divine, labeling it as one emotion based on one even repeated experiences, in a sense, that in itself is an affirmation. It is also a line setter, a boundary drawer. Because at the end of the day, if we draw the conclusion that somebody is XYZ in a way that limits them or is negative, then we are, in a sense, closing down on any hope, any expectation, any opportunity for that person or being or event in future to present in a different manner. We've already concluded. Can you see how, therefore, I'm coming back to the analogy of the brick wall? In that very moment, we have started to build a dodgy structure. It may be 100% correct for the experience that we had that has created the conclusion that we've made. But you see, again, none of us is only selfish. None of us is only arrogant. None of us is only angry. Yeah, whatever those words are. We each are much more than that. And at the end of the day, if we want to grow the right stuff, we have to affirm the right stuff. That doesn't mean deny. What it does mean is that in spite of the moment when so-and-so channeled XYZ as a state that we didn't particularly like, or we found, less than could be, in spite of that, they are still a whole bag of tricks that is beyond that experience. The minute we remember that, we ourselves are opening up into universal energy again. We ourselves are opening up the entire experience, the entire landscape that we're in that moment of affirmation. We're opening it back up so that divine frequencies can flood in and help everything balance out and shift and heal and further, not only us as intuitive learners and developers, but also the other people involved. In a sense, what we're talking about is egoic self-status as a very limiting and limited aspect of self. That doesn't necessarily mean it's horrible. It doesn't necessarily mean it's really, really bad. It just means that egoic self is always drawing lines. It's always putting things into boxes. And whenever we box, we will always cut off a certain aspect of creation that actually does exist, whether that's in that other being or event or entity, or whether it's because, just life in general. So in a sense, what I'm trying to get to is that part of this month's dynamic seems to be about helping people move into this realization more in a way that all of a sudden they can forgive more than they ever have. Now, that's an interesting word, isn't it? Because forgive is often interpreted as forget it ever happened, dismiss what happened, and therefore dismiss your experience of it, dismiss any hurt or upset or dissonance that you experienced in a moment. When in fact, forgiveness isn't that. Nothing on a spiritual level should be dismissive of what is experienced. Spirituality is about allowing all these things to speak and therefore giving them the room, the time and the space to do so in a way that by doing that, we come to full understanding and healing, and therefore we're able to release the memory, not forget it, not pretend it never happened, but we release it from our grip in a way that we don't hold it like a magnet to attract more of the same. So this month is very definitely a time that is wanting people to release into the nothing everything they hold, on an energetic level, on a perceptual level, and through breath. Because by doing that, we help ourselves release from any sameness, from any repetition, from any stuckness that we have been surrounded by, that we have created, or that, irrespective of either, we're just sitting in. And sometimes that can be really loud and other times it can be really subtle. So if I can help at this particular moment of 2025, I'd recommend, again, use your breath and let go of all labels of all people without denying the accuracy of the view you may have formed in the moment they were created. So again, you're not being asked to forget the moment, pretend it never happened. You're not being asked to become doormat or turn the other cheek in a way that it gets another hit. What you're being asked to do is release the firmness, the rigidity, because again, 5 is adaptability. 5 is be adaptable, be malleable, not in a manipulative or subordinating sense, but in a way that therefore you can deal with the present. And so irrespective of whether he, she, or it was negative at that moment, you're not forgetting that, but you're now giving them the room and the opportunity not only to have processed and learned that for themselves and integrated better on a spiritual level, but also you're giving them the opportunity, and therefore life the opportunity, to present now as a more learned being. Only by doing these things do we be present. Only by doing these things do we even give ourselves a chance to witness the beings that we actually want to see. Do we actually give ourselves the chance to receive the states and the moments that we want, especially as we get older? Because as we age, we gather experiences, we gather appearances, we gather memories, And through that, therefore, we can become stuck in our opinion in a way that all of a sudden the brick wall that we built, even if it's a beautiful 7 foot high, it's crumbling at the bottom. So know that this month is about undoing dynamics like this for the sake of rebuilding, or even maybe not even rebuilding. Maybe it's just a patch job. Maybe it's just a replacement of one brick, which on the energetic level is really easy to do. So know this, process it, come back into a place where, to the degree that you need to label anyone, label their behaviour in the moment rather than them themselves. Don't be foolish with that, don't be naive with that, but give everything and everyone the chance to reboot, the chance to grow, the chance to realise. Because as you do that, often life surprises you with the very space that you created coming back as a manifestation. All the very best to you for the rest of January. Please let me know if you need a hand, whether that's mentoring, professional or personal, intuitive development, spiritual development, readings, healings, clearings, anything. Take good care. Speak with you soon.